Hello, everybody. This is Fredrick Kenniston at Axiom, and this is the Microsoft Office Importer for AutoCAD Maximum Results Minimum Effort Training webinar. And just so you know, the training webinars that we do once a month, they're geared towards people that, for whatever reason, can't schedule for an individual training session for themselves or their company. So these are training sessions that we invite any of our customers of a particular product to attend. And like I said, we do these about once a month. The product that we do each month changes, but today it's a Microsoft Office Importer for AutoCAD. So thank you all for attending. If you have questions, you can use the chat or the Q&A area, and I'll do my best to keep my attention on those and answer questions as I go. I am recording the session too, so later anybody that's here or maybe arrived a little late or even couldn't attend for whatever reason, there will be links sent out to the video a little later in a day or two or three, and so you'll be able to watch the video and share it with your colleagues if you need to, that sort of thing. All right, so before I get into the program proper, I'll give you some background on it. So the product called Microsoft Office Importer that Axiom developed has existed since 1996, originally in MicroStation, made by the Bentleys. And then in 2012, we created the AutoCAD version. And that version runs also in Civil 3D and also in a number of the other AutoCAD application packages like AutoCAD Electrical and so forth. 7.5 years ago, we created a version for Revit. A couple months ago, we created a version for BerksCAD. And next year, 2026, coming up here soon, it'll have been around for 30 years, that functionality. Now, the name Microsoft Office Importer gives you a clue what it does. It gives you the ability to import Word and Excel files or portions of them in AutoCAD into model space and also paper space layouts. And because it's been around so long, as we find things in the different platforms that would be useful in the other platforms, those things get ported to the other platforms. So it's constantly being updated. It's a very mature product, very easy to use. And I'll show you that as we go through here. Where do we start first? Well, after you install the program, and it runs in AutoCAD, I think it's 2017 all the way up through and including 2026. May actually run in some earlier versions, but 2017 I know for sure, and up to the current version. And when you install it and then you open up a drawing file, you'll see an Axiom tab here, and then these buttons in the upper left that I'm putting my cursor over are the program. Now this is the newest version, which was released within the last couple of months. You see it's got a new button here, paste file, which I'll go over in a little while. But there are little tweaks and things like that added along with this new functionality, the paste file. So how does it work? Well, I'll go out to an Excel file. I'll start pasting from Excel first, but I'll also do paste from Word here in a little while. So you select what you want in Excel, you do a copy, go back to your drawing file, click the first button, which is Paste Clipboard. When you do that, it then turns the data in Excel into AutoCAD objects. And then when you click with the mouse and zoom in, there's the pasted information. Now, when I put my cursor over any portion of it, you notice the entire paste highlights. The reason why is because we paste it as a block reference. And that means that you can then, after you've got it pasted, if you need to, you can grab it and more precisely place it if you need to. And then after you move it like that, if you later do an update on the paste based on a change made in the source file, which I'll show you in a second, it'll leave the paste where you last placed it, so it won't shift around where it was first pasted, sort of thing. Now, because it's AutoCAD objects, after you've got the data pasted in, and this is just, it's either text, mtext, or lines, you could give this drawing file to anyone, and if that person you give it to you don't give them the source file that the pasted data came from, or give them access to it, or if they don't have Microsoft Office Importer, none of that matters. They'll be able to see the pasted information just like any other objects in a AutoCAD file, and they won't get any odd link errors or anything like that. But if you have Microsoft Office Importer and you have access to the source file that the pasted data came from, you can do some things with the paste like this. So I'm going to click this button, Edit Source, and if there's one paste in the drawing file, it knows what paste you're talking about. If there's more than one, it'll prompt you in the lower left here to click on the paste you want to edit the source file for. So with this one, it knows which one, and it opens it, and then it highlights the exact pasted area, so you don't have to go looking around for it. And from here, I'll make a couple of the obvious changes. I'll change the color of this text at the top. I'll change the detail of this cell here in the upper left. Then I'll save the file. I'm going to go back. If I click this button, Manage Link, and then click the Update button on it, you'll see above here that the paste updates based on the changes I made in the source file. Very easy. You paste, it creates a link back to the source file. Then you can do updates on the paste based on changes made in the source file. Now this dialog box gives you a couple other things too. Notice at the top here, it's got Use File Path to Find Source Document. That's the option that will apply when you're pasting data from a file stored in a local or network drive. And notice it's a selection box too. When I click it, you also have the ability to paste from a Word or Excel file stored in SharePoint or OneDrive, and also from ProjectWise, which is the project or collaboration platform made by Bentley's makers of MicroStation. And I'll show you how to deal with files stored in one of those platforms here in a little bit. Now, if the file is stored on a local or network drive, and if the file name is changed or if the file is moved, you could click this select button with that Use File Path to Find Source Document option set. You click select, navigate out, pick up the file again, it'll reset the link to the file. Then down below that, you see it says update automatically when the drawing file opens. Default for that in the AutoCAD, Civil 3D, MicroStation, and BricsCAD version of this program is when you open the drawing file, it will check the source files, and if it sees any changes, it'll automatically update any paste it needs to without any intervention from you. In other words, it'll do so just as soon as you open the drawing file, but you can modify that behavior in the settings if you want, and I'll show you more about that in a little bit. And if you don't want that applied to a specific paste, you can turn this off and then click Apply, and then that specific paste will not be set to update automatically when the drawing file opens. So it gives you some flexibility there. And now below that linked area, this shows for Excel, the range of cells that the paste is composed of, the top left cell, bottom right cell. And it also records the name of the worksheet from the spreadsheet that the data came from. Now, you could use these fields something like this. Notice on the far right here, I have a remarks column. If I edit my source file now, and I insert a new column and save the file, if I go back and click update, it's going to push that remarks column outside the original pasted area. So with these fields, I could adjust the scope of the paste on the fly, in this case to pick up information that was part of the paste initially, that same remarks column. And if necessary, I can use these fields to expand or contract the scope of the paste, or even just move the scope of the paste if I needed to do anything like that at all. And then down below, paste settings, this is new. So this is with the last major version, again, which was released in the last couple months. So it used to be if you had a paste that you wanted to, when I click this button, change the font formatting of the text, I should say, borders, and also the scale factor of the text, you would have had to, in the past, before we implemented this, delete the paste, go into the settings, set the settings the way you want, and then redo your paste. So this could, depending on what you need, save you a bit of time, so that if you wanted to change those types of settings for an existing paste, you click Paste Settings, and then change the font, change the formatting for the font, change the settings for the borders, change the scale factor of the text, things like that, and then apply that, and then it would change that for the paste on the fly. So, you know, it's a time saver in that regard. That way you wouldn't have to delete the paste, set the settings, and redo the paste every time. All right, so that's the basics of pasting for Excel. I'm going to do the same thing for Word. I'm just going to move to a little cleaner area here. And I'll open up my sample Word file. And I'm going to grab this upper section, which has a bunch of different formatting in it that we use to demonstrate how closely we can reproduce the formatting that you find in Word. So it has superscript and subscript text, bold, italic, and underlined text, different fonts, numbered paragraphs, bulleted paragraphs, and even some table data in this section. So I'll copy all that, and then I'll click Paste, Clipboard, click. Now this is a new message box, and what this is for is related to us implementing the Paste File button. So when you paste from Word, what this lets you know is that, and this has always been the case when you have clicked Paste Clipboard in the past, this just lets you know through this message box that this is the case, is we create a bookmark in the Word file to keep track of the scope of the paste when you use the paste clipboard button. So that's all that first paragraph lets you know, is that we do that. So that lets you know exactly what you pasted and keeps track of exactly what you pasted when you use the paste clipboard button. So here you see the paste file button. It's grayed out right now. So this just lets you know when you use that, it doesn't use a bookmark. It's just, that's all this dialog box is letting you know. So now when I zoom in to the pasted area, you're going to see that it's got the superscript, subscript text, bold, italic, and underlined text, the different fonts, numbered paragraphs, bulleted paragraphs, and down below here, the table information. And this is linked back to the source file too. So if I do a update in the pasted area of the Word file, I can update the paste just like I showed you with Excel. Now the formatting is very important to the product manager, by the way. So if you are doing paste from Excel or Word and you run into some sort of formatting issue, then contact Axiom support, and I'll give you the contact information here a little later, and let us know about it. The product manager has told anybody handling Axiom support that if we get any sort of report of a formatting issue at all, he wants to know about it right away, and he'll work with the programming team to help make that better. All right, so that's the basics of pasting Word and Excel. And I've got this representation of a border here in model space just to make it quicker to get to. But obviously borders would be in paper space layouts. And I'm going to use this to help demonstrate a major feature of the program, which some of you may be familiar with already. So when I go to the settings under pasting, notice at the top it has this split paste into columns option. When you turn that on, it gives you access to this next one, which is for Excel to repeat so many rows of header information over the top of each column that splits off. Now, when I go to my Excel file and remove that column I inserted earlier, you'll see here I've got 5 rows of what could be called header information. It's just the first number of rows in the file, by the way. So I'm going to put 5 here and click OK. And now I'm going to go grab all of my Excel file. This is about 4 pages of data for 8.5 by 11 sheets. And I'll click the Paste Clipboard button. It analyzes the information, turns it all into AutoCAD objects. Click once in the upper left, I pull down to the right. And notice it gives me a representation of where the columns are going to fall, but it also gives me a representation of where the header information is going to copy over the top of each column that's split off. In addition to that, if I move my cursor up or down, it'll adjust the height of the columns, as you see. If I move it left or right, it'll adjust the space between the columns. And then with the second mouse click, it pastes the data. When I zoom in, you'll see it copied the header information over the top of the 2 columns that were split off. And each column is individually selectable. Again, that just makes it possible. So after you've got them pasted, if they're too far apart or too close, that sort of thing, you just grab them and move them if you need to. And if you do this, again, if later you have to do an update based on changes made in the source file, update for the paste, it'll leave the columns where you last placed them. It won't shift them back to where they were first pasted. This option, splitting paste into columns, also has these features. One is, in this scenario, if I add a bunch of rows to this spreadsheet, when I do an update on the paste, if it sees that this last column will then end up being taller than the columns before it, it will automatically, as part of that process, split off a new column to the right if it needs to. After it splits off that column, you may have to adjust it where it places. You may have to move it in or out, depending on where it shows up. But again, it'll automatically split off new columns if it needs to when you do an update, without any intervention from you. It'll also do the opposite, where if I delete a bunch of rows from the spreadsheet and I do an update on the paste, and as a result of that update, if it sees that this last column or other columns are no longer needed when I do the update, it'll automatically get rid of them again without any intervention from you at all. Now, I am going to do a paste from Word, splitting it into columns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a line, because there's one thing about pasting Word in the columns that you might run into that I'm just going to give you some data on how to handle one thing related to it. It's just an oddity related to how Word keeps track of number sequences when it comes to, or letter sequences when it comes to numbered or lettered paragraphs. So I've got the line there just as a reference point. So we'll go back to my Word file, grab all of it. This is also about 4 pages of information, just so you know. And then I'm going to go back to Axiom, paste, and zoom just a touch. And I'll split that into columns. Now, the reason I did that is when I zoom in, you'll see that the columns are not going to be quite the same height. You see here, this one's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. As I go over the rest of them, a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, and that one at the end, of course, it is shorter a bit. Now, the reason I showed you that is what happens is the way Word keeps track of numbering sequences in paragraphs is as long as those paragraphs stay intact, then the sequencing of the numbered or lettered paragraphs following a particular numbered or lettered paragraph will stay the same. The reason I mention that is this. If you take this paragraph here, 1, and let's say when we were laying out the columns, if 1 or 2 lines ended up crossing the bottom column as we were laying it out, then the program will automatically push that paragraph all the way to the top of the next column and then flow the rest through. Reason being is so that the sequencing will remain intact. If, however, you were to split this paragraph, let's say 2 lines cross the bottom boundary of where the column was laying out, if you split that paragraph and it pushed part of that paragraph to the top of the next column, then any numbered paragraphs in this particular situation that followed that split paragraph would then start the resequencing at 1. So obviously, just because of how Word keeps track of the sequencing, that's not optimum. So we don't split paragraphs like that when they cross the bottom boundary of a column. And as a result, you may then run into columns in Word when you're laying them out, splitting pastes into columns, where the columns might not be the same height. If you see that, there's a couple of things that you can do in Word to mitigate that if they're really off. And that is you can go to your Home tab in Word, and then go to the paragraph group here, turn on your formatting where it says show hide and then the paragraph marker Pilcrow, that's called. You turn that on and you see you've got your paragraph marks and spaces with little dots here and things like that. And then you can do things like this. You can put your cursor at the end of a line, press enter so you end up with a null paragraph. That'll add some space. Or you can also click in a paragraph, right click, go to paragraph, and then go to the spacing before and after, and you can increase or decrease spacing before or after a paragraph like that too. Save the file, and then you can go back and you can go to manage link, update the paste. So if you need to, you can dial in the settings related to how those paragraphs lay out if they're really off, sort of thing. Again, that's just a quirk with Word that you may have to deal with if you're splitting it into columns. All right, so now that I've got that done, I'm going to go to this button here, which is the list of links dialog box. And this lists all the Microsoft Office importer links in the drawing file. Now, under layout, see where it says model, that's because everything I pasted was in a model space. But if I had paste in any of the paper space layouts, it would give the exact name of the paper space layout that the paste existed in. Also, you'll see under details, if it says Olay link anything, it's a word paste always. If it says anything else, it'll be the sheet name followed by the range of cells that the paste is composed of from Excel. Under status, in these 4 cases, all of them say that their source file for the paste is open in its application. I'm going to change that. I'm going to go out to each file, and I'm going to make a slight change, close. Same thing with Excel. Make a slight change, save, close. Then I'll reopen this, and you're going to see that now all my pastes are out of date. So if you see 1 or more pastes that are out of date here, you can use your Shift or Control key on your keyboard, and then your left mouse button, select the ones that you want, and then when you click Update, this is how you manually update more than 1 paste at a time. This is different from the Manage Link dialog box, which just gives you the ability to update 1 paste at a time. And due to network lag or other computer lag or something like that, one of them might have an issue. Like you see there, you just redo it, and they're all up to date. So anyway, what I was saying, Manage Link gives you the ability to update 1 at a time. So this is where you update multiple pastes at a time manually. In addition to all that, if you select the line here and you double click, it'll take you to that paste in the view. So you don't have to go looking around for it. Even if it's in a paper space layout, wherever it is, it'll fit that paste in the view. And on the bottom here, zoom extents, that's the same as double clicking on the line, fits the paste in the view. Display info border, when you click that, it draws a border around the paste, as you see there, and it puts link information in a block in the upper left of that. It'll tell you the name of the source file at least. It might even give you the relative path depending on where the file is located when you pasted it in. And it'll also tell you whether the link type is set to automatically update or not, which would be manual. And it tells you the last date and time that the paste was updated. This information is display only. It doesn't write it to the drawing file. And you can, in the settings, and I'll show you in a little while, change the look of this. So you can change the color, the thickness or weight, and the style of line used to draw this info border. It's just a personal preference setting, really on however you want that to look. You can also open the Manage Link dialog box from here. Now notice for Word, unlike I showed you earlier from the Manage Link dialog box for Excel, it gives you the name of the bookmark. If I use the Paste File button, it would then say whole document here as opposed to the name of a bookmark, just so you know. In addition, you can edit the source file from here. Open location of the file stored on a local or network drive. It'll open File Explorer into that location in case you need to look there for whatever reason. If the file is stored in SharePoint, OneDrive, or ProjectWise, and you click Open Location, it'll open that location as long as you have the credentials to access the file in that location. And we are looking at functionality to make it so that you can link to Word and Excel files stored in BIM 360 or Autodesk docs, just so you know. It's just not implemented just yet. Check status, I'll get back to. Update, I explain, and delete. I'm going to do that right now, just delete all of those. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to deal with a file that's stored in one of the platforms I mentioned, like SharePoint, OneDrive, or ProjectWise. But I'll just use SharePoint. What I show you here would also apply to OneDrive or a file stored, Word or Excel file stored in ProjectWise too. So me as the Director of Certification, I have a bunch of different testing platforms like for SharePoint and other things. I'll go to one of my SharePoint ones and I'll open up an Excel file here. Now, if you do this on your own without any setup, the way Microsoft Office products are set up is it will automatically open them in the web-based application, but that's not what you want. After you open it though, on the right side, one of the menu items will either say editing or viewing. You click that, and at the bottom it'll say open in desktop app. That's what you want. Me, I did a little setup. So I click once, and then once again, saves me a mouse click or two, and then it'll open in its application. Once it's open, it's just like you're dealing with a file stored on a local file system. You highlight what you want, copy, go back and paste that data. So now I've got it pasted. I'm going to make changes to that file where it's stored there in SharePoint. Save the file, close it. Now, when I go back to the list of links, you'll see the source column. It's very obvious this is stored in SharePoint because it says, it gives you the full URL. But notice under status, you can't tell if the paste is up to date or not. That's because if the file's not stored on a local or network drive, we can't check the status of the paste directly compared to the source file data. So that's what this check status button was implemented for. So as long as you have the credentials to access the file in the location that it's stored in, click check status, it'll go out, it'll pull it, and it'll come back and tell you whether the paste is up to date or not. If it's out of date, you click update, and just like the file was stored on a local or network drive, it'll update the paste, as you see there. So there you go. So let me delete that. And that's the major functionality. I'm going to go into the settings here to wrap this up, just so you know. Now, when I go to the settings button, at the top of it in the title bar, you see it says Microsoft Office Importer Settings, gives you a little dash. And then it gives you the relative location and name of the currently loaded settings file. Every Axiom program settings file ends with a .ini extension. It just means initialize or initialization, just so you know. The reason I'm showing you this is many of our customers will create different settings files for work with different customers or for different projects. The way they do that is they'll go File, Save Settings As. They'll give it an appropriate name like a project name or customer name, whatever the case may be. After they do that, notice the name changes here in the title bar. Then they'll change the settings as they want for the work that they're going to do for that project or for that customer. And then they'll go File, Save Settings. Then when they're ready to do work for a particular project or customer, they'll go File, Load Settings, and they'll load whatever settings file is appropriate for the work they're going to do. Now, categories, font. So by default, we use the same fonts as the source document. That gives you the most exact match when it comes to the formatting that you'll find in Word or Excel. You can also use a default font, any font that's available to you in AutoCAD you could paste with, AutoCAD fonts or Windows TrueType fonts. Now, if you do use a default font, particularly in the case of a TrueType font, we highly recommend that you use that same font exclusively in Word or Excel. That way, it'll mitigate or even completely nullify any possibility of a font mapping issue, which I'll show you more about in a little bit. But if you're pasting with an AutoCAD font, with the exception of very few, like one called Leroy and maybe one or two others, you're not going to find a TrueType font in Word or Excel that matches exactly a AutoCAD font. Again, there's just very few exceptions, like Leroy, I know for sure, and then maybe one or two others. That being the case, if you have to paste with a AutoCAD font and you do a paste from Word or Excel, you'll have to look at it and see how the mapping from the TrueType font to the AutoCAD font messes with the formatting. It may be negligible, may be fine, or it may be fairly drastic depending on the differences between the character height and width and character spacing, that sort of thing. So if you find that, the way you handle font mapping issue is there's three different ways, and I'm going to go ahead and go over that now. I'm just going to do this with a TrueType font, but the principles that I show you here are going to apply any place. So we'll use a nice copper plate Gothic bold. Why? Just because. And now I'll go to my sample Excel file. And notice it's all set to Arial. So I'm going to tighten the text down very, very close to the text. Just make the columns wide enough to display the text that's just shown there. And save the file. Now I'm going to highlight a section of this, do a copy. In fact, let me make sure I save that here. And now go back and I'm going to paste this using this copper plate Gothic bold as my default font. And you're going to see what will be an obvious font mapping issue. So the differences in character height and width and character spacing make it so that going from Arial, where I could see the text here, even though the columns and rows were very tightly around a lot of the text, I can still read it fine. But when it's mapping from that to the copper plate Gothic bold, it's much different to the point where it's cutting text off or overriding border lines, that sort of thing. Might even be wrapping weird in some places. So this is a very severe font mapping issue. If you see anything like this, there's three ways to handle it. One I mentioned, which is you'll have to pick a font in Word or Excel, a TrueType font that matches as closely as you can gauge it with your eyes, the font that you're pasting with in AutoCAD. If it's a TrueType font, then you can match it one for one. If it's an AutoCAD font, though, you might have to do some test paste to dial in a font that matches as closely as possible the AutoCAD font you're pasting with. That's one. Two, the second way to handle it, and these three different ways, by the way, are not mutually exclusive, just so you know. So you can go to your Excel file, and this also applies to Word table, by the way, and you can adjust the column widths, and if necessary, the row heights. This you might have to dial in a bit. Save. You go back, go to Manage Link, and update. The changes that you made there are going to be recognized as a change. So see, at least in these first couple of cells here, I can read the text. Others, maybe not so much, so I'd have to do some more adjusting. Again, you might have to dial that in, adjust things a little bit, save the file, update it until you get it to display you want. Again, that's the second way. Now I'm going to undo that and save my file. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this same swatch by going to Edit Source, and it'll notice it highlights that same section. So I'm going to undo changes that I made, save it. Now I'm going to copy that. And now I'm going to go in and to the settings, I'm going to show you the third way to mitigate a font mapping issue. So under Scale, this is where you set the text height and width. I'll get into what these height and width numbers are in just a little bit. But the numbers I'm interested in most now are related to what I'm trying to solve here, which is the font mapping issue, and that's these settings: height, padding, and width padding. These control the blank space around text in cells, whether it's Excel cells or Word table cells. And the width padding also controls the distance between a number, bullet, and letter, and the numbered, bulleted, or lettered paragraphs that they're associated with. Now, you might have to dial these settings in, but you can adjust these and then do a new paste, and you can see how adding space around the text in the cells will mitigate the font mapping issue. I'm going to do the best I can from memory here. Click OK. And now I'll paste from that same section. You'll see it's quite a bit bigger. Click. When I zoom in, now I can read the text just fine. If it was still too narrow or not high enough, that sort of thing, then after you do the paste, you could undo it, adjust those numbers, save the settings file, do another paste, and again, you might have to dial that in a bit, but that's the third way of handling a font mapping issue. So in summary, when it comes to handling font mapping issues, whether severe or not so severe, there's three ways to do it. One is to, if you're using a true type font as that you're pasting with, and you've got the setting to use a default font, then make sure that that default font as a true type font matches the true type font you're using in Word or Excel. If you're pasting with an AutoCAD font, then you'll have to look for and utilize a font in Word or Excel that matches as closely as you can gauge it with your eyes, the font that you're pasting with in AutoCAD. And you may have to do some test paste with that until you kind of dial that in, choosing different fonts. And lastly, again, these ways are not mutually exclusive, is you can use that height padding and width padding setting to add space around the text in the cells for Word table cells and Excel cells. And you might have to dial those settings in, and then you can mitigate the font mapping issue like that. So now we'll go back to the settings, and we'll wrap the rest of this up here. So related to font, we have this formatting. And so this allows you to bring in text with different properties. You can bring it in with certain colors, certain line weights, certain line styles, and also what layer you want the text to come in on. You can import stack fractions, things like that. For the borders, you can do the same sort of thing. Now notice we've got thin lines, medium lines, thick lines. That's because Word and Excel both support 3 different thicknesses of lines. So you can, for color and for weight also in AutoCAD, map each one of those thicknesses to specific colors and specific thicknesses when you do a paste. You can also tell it what layer that you want the lines to come in on. Now, import border lines as in source. What this means is if there are border lines drawn, we draw them, and where they're not drawn, we don't draw them. Next one is always. That means whether border lines are drawn around cells or not, whether in Word tables or Excel cells, we always draw when the borders when we do a paste. And never is just give me the text data. I don't want to see any of the border lines at all. We can also import diagonal border lines defined in the source. You have to have this on before you do the paste, by the way. Same thing with importing filled cells and also patterns. Scale. So we're back here now. I'm going to put these back to my height padding, width padding, back to the default settings here. Now, these height and width numbers that you see here, these are a ratio. When I click calculate, it'll make more sense. You tell it the point size of the prominent text in your document. In other words, if 10-point text is what is mostly used in your document, then that's what you put. Then you tell it the height and width and drawing units you need that text to paste at in AutoCAD. Now, when it does that, if there's text bigger or smaller as far as point size related to the point size that you put at the top there, it'll then come in proportionally larger or smaller with that text size that you've got there as a base. It also then, after you put this data in, will calculate the ratio necessary to bring this text in at that height and width. So that's what these numbers are, is that ratio. Now, you can also, if you need to, add other scale factors to care for other documents. Like let's say you have a lot of documents that are 10-point, but you have some that are prominently 12-point text. So you click add, and we'll change this name to 12 points. We'll go to calculate, we'll change the top number to 12. Let's say we still need that text to come in at 10 and 10. Notice the ratio is different. Click OK. And now I'll go File, Save Settings. What that does is that saves that new scale factor into the settings file. And in addition to that, if whatever scale factor I've got selected when I click the OK button, that's what it's going to use for the next paste. But if that's not what I want, it doesn't matter because you can change that on the fly as long as you have those other scale factors saved in your settings file. So if I grab this text here, copy it, now when I go to paste that, you're going to see there's a secondary dialog box here. Now, any scale factor that's saved in your settings file, notice this selection box for paste scale. You can change the scale on the fly based on what's saved in the file and then paste with whatever scale factor it is that you've got there. So there's that, and then we've got pasting. So here's where you split paste into columns, which I showed you earlier. You could also keep multi-column paste together as a group. If you do create them as a group and you end up with the columns too far apart or too close together, that sort of thing, you can ungroup them, and then you can reposition the columns and then regroup them, and then they'll maintain that spacing in the new group. We also added with not the last major version, but a couple major versions ago, the ability to start a new column after a page break. So when you turn that on, click OK. I'm going to go to Word here first. So let's say I wanted to break the first column at the end of this paragraph right here. So what you do is you put your cursor in front of the next paragraph, right-click, go to Paragraph on the menu, go to Line and Page Breaks, go to Page Break Before, click OK. Notice that pushes that to the top of the next page, and then save your file. Now when I grab all of this and copy it, and I go back and paste it to split it into columns, watch what happens. So notice I'm moving my cursor up or down, and that first column is broken right at that point. It's not moving any farther. It'll move shorter, but it won't move any farther down. So that's broken by that page break. Click again. When I zoom in, you'll see it broke it at that specific paragraph, and then the other one is then 3.1 positioned here at the top. You can do the same thing with Excel, but in Excel, the way you insert a page break is a little different, which I'll show you. You go to the row you want it to break. You go to Page Layout, Breaks, then Insert Page Break, save the file. Now, when you're laying it out, it'll lay out the same way I just showed you with Word. As you're pulling down after you start to paste, any columns that are broken with the page break will stop right where the page break was inserted. All right, we're almost done here. We have Allow Columns to Overlap. That was implemented to give people a couple of customers wanted to do this, where they had a spreadsheet that had data in it in some columns, but then it had columns after that which were just the border lines. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to split the paste into columns, but then overlap them in such a way that it looked like one big wide spreadsheet. So that's what that's for. Very kind of specialized. And you can also define the paste width manually for Word and Excel. And that's to do things like this. If you like this space between the border here and the that paste. In fact, let me grab that paste, move it out a little bit. So let's say you have an area like this that you want to fit a paste in between here. So if I go to Excel, I'll just grab a swatch here. Yeah, but that setting set, when I do paste, you zoom in a touch, it's going to ask you for 2 mouse clicks. So here's 1, and notice it's not pasting it yet. And then I click again, and then it fits it within that distance. Now, once you get to a certain distance away, it'll even out the columns. It'll keep the text scale the same, but it won't mess with the text scale. But it'll, after some point, it'll leave the columns as you get farther and farther away from the first point. It'll even them out, just so you know. And it'll do the same thing with Word. Word, it's particularly if it's just text, it just wraps it. So it could be as wide or as narrow as you want it to be. If you get with a table, though, like you have here, you can get too narrow where it might look like this, where it looks like a font mapping issue. So when it comes to Word tables and Excel, you can get too narrow if you're using that feature. So it's kind of specialized as far as when you might need it and when you might use it, sort of thing. All right, so then Linking, it creates a link back to the original document and sets it to update automatically when the drawing file opens. Now, if you want to do a paste where you don't want it linked back to the source file or you don't need it to, in other words, you want to just use the program to make the data look nice when you paste it in, that's great. You can just turn this off. You can still use every other setting and option in the program. You could split the paste into columns. You could set the font, the scale factor of the text, that sort of thing. It's just that after you paste it, it won't be linked back to the source file. And then you could maintain that within the drawing file from then on if you want. Then once you're done with that and you want to use the program as it was designed, just go File, Load Settings, and reload the settings file, and it'll reset that option. Updating, the default for AutoCAD and MicroStation, quirks CAD, is when you open up their files, any pastes that need to be updated will be automatically updated without any intervention from you. It won't even prompt you. It'll just start updating them. But if you want to change that, you can change it to Ask Before. That'll prompt you. That's the default for the Revit version. Revit users wanted more control over that, so we changed the default for them, just so you know. But anybody can use this one too. And what this does is when you open the drawing file, then it'll open up a message box and it'll say something like, I found pastes that could be updated. Would you like to update them, yes or no? If you click yes, all the pastes that need to be updated will be updated. If you click no, it'll leave them alone, and you could manually update them one at a time using the Manage Link dialog box, or you could update multiple pastes at a time through the List of Links dialog box. You can also say don't update any automatic pastes at all. In that case, it'll leave them alone. You can manually update them later if you want. List of links. So the default behavior when you double click on a line for a link in that List of Links dialog box is to fit the paste in the view. But you can change it to any one of these other radio button options if you want. You also have the ability with this checkbox to automatically display the List of Links dialog box when Microsoft Office Importer starts up. What that means is anytime you then open up a drawing file with that dialog box displaying, you'll be very quickly able to see if there's any Microsoft Office Importer paste in the drawing file you just opened, because it'll display right there in the List of Links dialog box. That's what that's for. And then the info border, which you can display through the List of Links dialog box. These are the settings for that. Again, they're just personal preference, however you want that to look. This information is not written to the design file or to the drawing file like I mentioned earlier. And hotkeys, these only exist for the AutoCAD version. So when you click Enable Hotkeys and click New, any of the buttons that you see in the toolbar, like Paste Clipboard, Edit Source, Manage Link, List of Links, and the settings, you can create a hotkey for. And for example, let's do Paste Clipboard. You could go Shift P if you want, or whatever the case may be, a couple of keys combo. And after you got it set, after you do a copy and then you put your cursor over the drawing area, you hit Shift P and it'll click or activate Paste Clipboard, and you can do a paste that way. Now, one thing I didn't show you is a paste file, and this only works currently for Word. I mentioned it earlier, but didn't show you. So you just click it, and then you go out and you grab your Word file you want to paste, and it automatically puts you in paste mode. So if you want to split the paste in columns, you can, but notice it's got all of the Word file right there. It just saves you a mouse click or two. And we're looking at a way of doing the same thing for Excel and having it accessed and available through paste file. It's just not implemented yet. We're experimenting with that. So back to the settings file. Now, if you need help with the program, go to Settings, and then you see there's a Help menu. Click that. Go to Contents. That opens up the PDF documentation. When you scroll down and you look for something called Quick Start, whoops, here, this is the basic tutorial for the program. It's set up so that A, it tells you in the prerequisites and so forth where to find the sample files that come with the program, that are installed with the program, because those are used in this Quick Start guide. And then it very easily takes you step by step through the basics of using the program. After that, it's the full documentation of the program, every button, option, setting, and you'll also see there's troubleshooting, technical details, that sort of thing. There's a lot of data here that can help you. But if you need help beyond that, go back to the Settings button, go to the Help and then About item on the menu there. And this opens up a web page. On the left column here, it gives you information that'll help our support area help you faster. That gives you the exact version and build of the program you're running, license information, and also the exact build date and time of the version of the program you're running. If the program is using a license file, which is our older licensing system, it'll tell you where it's located. But more and more of our programs, like this one currently, uses our new licensing system, which uses a license server, gives you more flexibility when it comes to activating, deactivating, moving licenses around, that sort of thing. And then on the right here, you call this number, ask for support, you'll get where you need to go. I'll give this to you via the chat here. And if you ask for support, like I said, you'll get where you need to go. You can also check our knowledge base at this link and create a new support ticket with that link. And also email us at support@axiomint.com. I'll give this to you via chat too. So if you need help beyond what the documentation gives you, contact us, either email or phone. If you send an email, that automatically creates a support ticket, so you can get help that way too. And in addition, you can use the email address or phone for things like this. If there's a functionality that you'd like to see added to Microsoft Office Importer, or if you'd like to see a modification made to help handle some workflow issue with the program that you're running into, then you can request such things by contacting us. You can also use the email address or phone number to ask about other workflow issues you're running into to see if we already have a program, or ask about possibly looking at developing a program that would help with whatever that workflow issue is, things like that. And we also do custom programming in AutoCAD, Civil 3D, Revit, MicroStation, BricsCAD, and also in the IT area. We have 20 plus years experience handling things related to data migration and bulk editing many different file types, upwards of millions of files at a time. We do other areas too, but those are the areas that we have a ton of experience in. So if you have something custom programming wise you'd like to see if we can help you, then contact us, ask for a consultation, and we'll see what you need and give you our data on our skill set and resources we have available, and if we can help you, great. That's all I have for you all today. Now, I don't see anything in the Q&A area, but I'll look again. Nope, and I don't see anything in the chat. So are there any questions with the few minutes we have left that people might have about things I went over, or maybe that I didn't go over? And if so, I'll answer what I can with the time we have left. We don't work with Ignite yet, at least not with any Axiom products. If that's something that looks like you might benefit from, Todd, then use either the contact information or create a support ticket and request such a thing. The way our requests work, just so you know, on anything that we do here, whether it's for functionality added to programs or new programs that people would like to see us develop, is those go into this very special database, which we treat like gold. And that's used by our product managers and senior product managers to see what things that we should schedule projects for. So the higher the likelihood that something will be done is going to be based on how many requests we get for such a thing. So the more requests we get for various things, the higher the likelihood and the faster it'll be done. So if that's something that you'd like to see, if that would help you, then definitely contact us and put in a request for such a thing. It'll get to that database and it'll be seen by our product managers. That goes for Ignite or any other functionality that you guys would like to see added or programs you'd like to see developed, that sort of thing. Any other questions for me, anybody? All right. Well, with that, then I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I hope this was very beneficial for you. And keep your eyes open for if you have other Axiom products for the next scheduled monthly training webinar. And if you have the time and could do so, you can also contact us via our contact information to get company direct scheduled training with me, as opposed to a group webinar training that we could do for your company specifically, or for you if that's needed. And with that, have a good rest of your work week and enjoy your holiday here coming up. And thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.